अस्सलाम वालेकुम रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातहू। अस्सलाम वालेकुम।
तकबीर! नारे तकबीर!
So before we know it, Jalsa 2016 has arrived, and since the end of Jalsa even, we see that as Hazur finishes a Jalsa, people go to their homes. Yeah. But for Hazur, the activities continue, and there's many activities that Hazur partakes in, and it takes weeks for the post Jalsa procedures to end for Hazur in a way.
Yeah, I mean Hazur's schedule, I've had the honour to see it from a fairly close perspective over the past few years, and it is non-stop. We can't do justice to how vast Hazur's responsibilities are. I mean, at the end of Jalsa, for example, you just mentioned, most of us go home and then probably rest for a week or rest for a while, because it's just being at Jalsa is quite physically exerting. But it's completely different in Hazur's schedule. After Jalsa, we just saw a shot of Hazur waving goodbye to the Jalsa people. Straight after that, Hazur, I know, returned to his personal residence for a few minutes, probably say 10 or 15 minutes. After that, he went straight to his office the same night. And there, Hazur met delegations from different countries. There were non-Ahmadi guests, new converts, non-Muslim guests, politicians, some journalists. So I remember there was some from Spain who had come. There was some from Canada and some other countries. I remember that even though they weren't necessarily arranged, some of the journalists requested Hazur during that evening session, after the whole day's events had already taken place, that can we take your interview? And there and then Hazur permitted them. And then they were asking Hazur questions about the teachings of Islam and the current contemporary issues.
And because this Jalsa Salana UK is like an international Jalsa, where delegations from all over the world come to the UK to meet Hazur and also to partake in this Jalsa. There's many delegations that come from very, very far off places like Africa. Sierra Leone delegation also came from there. There's quite an interesting incident that happened with regards to the Emir Sahib of Sierra Leone meeting Hazur.
Yeah, I think I mentioned the evening of Jalsa, but actually the whole entire following week, Hazur from morning to evening meets delegations from different countries. I mentioned the Sierra Leone one, that was quite interesting. The Emir Sahib from that country came with a number of politicians from his country, and they all met Hazur, and they were very pleased to seek Hazur's guidance on a number of issues. And I remember I was seated at the back of the Hazur's office in Fazal Mosque, and one of the politicians, who was a senior aide to the president of Sierra Leone, he suddenly took out his phone, and I was wondering, why is he taking out his phone? And then he asked Hazur that the president of Sierra Leone would like to speak to you. Is it okay if I connect him? And so Hazur said, yeah, go ahead. And Hazur, so the presidential aide just called up the president, handed the phone to Hazur, and then the president of Sierra Leone gave Hazur Mubarakbad, congratulations on the completion of Jalsa. Hazur asked him about how his country was, and offered his own thoughts about Sierra Leone, and the president requested prayers for his nation.
I think with regards to, we'll be discussing some of the other activities of Hazur Anwar Radhiyallahu Ta'ala bin Nasir Aziz in this program as well. I think the underlying, as you've mentioned, Hazur takes every opportunity to spread the message of Islam, and that's the underlying thing that Hazur always keeps before him. That is the role of a Khalifa in a way, that the word Khalifa in itself means a vicegerent, who is the vicegerent of a prophet, and the role of a prophet is somebody who's there to fulfill the two main obligations. One is to create the relationship with God Almighty, and secondly to guide mankind towards not just creating a relationship with God Almighty, but also between human beings, and also creating a relationship of mercy and kindness towards the creation of God Almighty.
I remember Hazur was in Sweden a few months ago, and there was an interview that took place in Gothenburg with Hazur, and after the interview, unfortunately, the lady who took the interview didn't include Hazur's clip, and I was quite upset about that. And I remember I mentioned it to Hazur later on, that she's broadcast this, but she showed some of the clips of the mosque and spoke to one or two other MDs. but she didn't show clips from the interview. Hazur just asked me, he said, did she tell the true teachings of Islam and about the promised Messiah? And I said, yes, she did. She mentioned it. And Hazur said, that's more than enough then. As long as the message of the promised Messiah is reaching this country, then it doesn't matter. And it shows Hazur's humility as well, that she took his time, she didn't use it, but still Hazur didn't care. All his focus was that Islam's teachings, the promised Messiah's message, as you said, he's the true deputy of the promised Messiah, is to reach that country. And I remember at the same time I mentioned that there was one neighbor who lived near the mosque, and he happened to have seen the clip that she'd shown, and he came to the mosque, and he was a little bit aggressive to the security. He was like, I've just heard on TV that there's a caliph, a khalifa who's here. Who is he? Why is he here? And then our khadim who was on duty, he did a good job in calming him down, explaining that Jamaat Ahmadiyya is a peaceful movement. Our khalifa is he who's spreading peace across the world, because that's Islam's teachings. And that person suddenly cooled down and became much more responsive, and said that he'd look forward to come back to the mosque as a visitor. And so I told Hazur about this as well. And so Hazur's comment was, at least that person, one person today has benefited, and the real message of Islam has reached that one person.
And with regards to so many other activities as well, these are certain activities that are for external guests or non-Ahmadis. But even amongst the Jamaat, Hazur throughout the year delivers a large number of lectures. I mean, one of the events that happened this year was the Ansar Ijtima, and in that Ijtima Hazur spoke about various things.
Hazur mentioned the fact that it was their anniversary, and Hazur then spoke about what is a true anniversary. He said the United Nations are also holding an anniversary. So many groups hold an anniversary, but anniversaries only mean something if you've achieved something, if you are following the true teachings that you set out for.
We'll have a look at the quote from Hazur from that Ijtima.
इस साल जैसा कि आप जानते हैं कि मजलिस अंसारुल्लाह अपनी मजलिस के कायम होने के 75 साल पूरे होने पर जुबली मना रही है। जुबली मनाना अच्छी बात है, ये बहुत सी बातों की तरफ तवज्जो भी दिलाती है, और इसके मनाने के हवाले से बाज़ अहम मंसूबों को अंजाम देने की तरफ ख़ास तवज्जो पैदा होती है, वादे किए जाते हैं, फिर अल्लाह ताला का शुक्र अदा करने की तरफ तवज्जो पैदा होती है.
With all of these the schemes that Muslim Maud started and that has been carried out throughout Khilafat, we see that it's not just on one occasion that Hazur delivers a speech to them. Rather, throughout the whole year, Hazur gives constant guidance to them. And that's the same not just with Ansar, Khuddam, but also for Lajna. And we know that Hazur this year also spoke to a Lajna Ijtima, in which Hazur gave particular guidance to them. Not just on that occasion, but we see that throughout the whole year, Hazur gives very particular guidance to Lajna as well. So we'll take a look at a clip from Lajna Ijtima with regards to what Hazur's message was to Lajna this year.
You are living in a society where it is easy for our children to be misled or misguided. Sometimes children can pick up wrong things or habits from their schools or outside. And so you must give ample time to your children. You must explain to them what is right and what is wrong. You must instill within them those values that are to be cherished and protected. You must explain Islamic teachings to them and tell them that these are the commands of Allah, and it was to re-establish these values that Allah sent the Prophet Messiah al-Islam.
This year, Hazur also addressed the Waqfin Ijtima and also the Waqfatin Ijtima. And Hazur places a lot of emphasis on Waqfin, whether they're boys or girls, and gives particular attention to them throughout the whole year.
I mean, the thing is that Hazur's focus very much is on Waqfatin or Waqfin, on their moral training, even their education, their secular education as well. because the thing is, these are the people who are going to be serving the Jamaat for the rest of their lives. And also Huzur wants to make sure that these people are doing this pledge willingly. So although their parents have made it, Huzur repeatedly gives them opportunities to renew their pledge. And so that only those people who are truly dedicated and devoted, who want to be part of the scheme, so there's no form of compulsion in this, but people are able to do it of their own volition. But then if they willingly do, which so many, mashallah, thousands of children across the world have decided that they want to continue with this pledge, then Huzur guides them on every single aspect of their lives. And we see how much care Huzur gives, that he takes time out to address the girls, the boys separately. And he's addressing them in the language of their language, which is English here in the United Kingdom. So Huzur speaks to them directly. And I know we have the classes in different countries when Huzur goes on tours. For example, in Japan and in Denmark, both places, they had done the translation in their Waqf classes of the Quran in Urdu, but they hadn't done it in the local language, which was Japanese and in Danish. And at both places, Huzur said to them that, what is the point? I want the children to learn. It's not so the purpose so that we can make a nice program for MTA. The purpose is for these Waqf children to learn about the true teachings of Islam, to understand the Quran. So you see, that's the true focus of Huzur, that he wants every single child to benefit and to learn about what Islam is and what their pledge is.
I think we've seen that all of Huzur's addresses are particular to the audience that Huzur is addressing, and in this year we've seen that Huzur addressed the Waqfat-e-Nau Ijtima and also the Waqf-e-Nau Ijtima, and Huzur gave very particular messages to at both occasions. We'll take a look at both of those clips. We've been very lucky, Jamia students have been very lucky, those Murabbiyan who graduate from the UK, that they've had the honour and august opportunity of Huzur visiting Jamia on a regular basis. And in particular, whenever there's a Shahid class graduating, the final year graduating, they've had the honour of Huzur attending the convocation ceremony and delivering a very powerful address. Because of the emphasis that Huzur lays on their responsibilities and the kind of image that is created within our minds of the huge task that Murabbiyan and missionaries of the Ahmadi Muslim community have on their shoulders, and Huzur directly telling the Jamia students what their roles and responsibilities are and the high expectations that Huzur lays upon them.
Huzur's addresses, as you said, at Jamia are always filled with so much wisdom and so many wonderful instructions that not just for Murabbiyan but for every single Ahmadi are extremely useful about how they can live their lives and how they should be living their lives. And one thing I've always noted at Hazur's addresses at Jamia is how much emphasis he gives on humility.
We will have a quick listen to Hazur's, an excerpt from Hazur's address at the Jamia convocation, and to give us a bit of an insight into Hazur's message at that occasion.
नई सोचों के साथ आगे बढ़ना होगा. इसके लिए आप लोगों को खुदा ताला से ताल्लुक़ में बढ़ने की कोशिश करनी होगी. आप आम मुअल्लिम और उस्ताद नहीं हैं, आम मुरब्बी नहीं हैं कि जिसने तरबियत कर देनी है लोगों की. किसी स्कूल के उस्ताद नहीं बनने लगे कि जहाँ जाके आपने सिलेबस पढ़ाया और बस मामला ख़त्म हो गया. बल्कि आपका मैदान, जैसा कि मैंने कहा, बहुत वसी मैदान है.
This year, Abid Sahib Hazur visited Japan, and Jamaat Ahmadiyya Japan had the honor of hosting Hazur, and Hazur inaugurated the new Baitul Ahad Mosque in Japan. That was a very interesting tour, watching it on MTA and also reading some of your diaries. It was a very interesting tour, and Hazur visited many places and also took part in some of the culture of Japan as well. So if you could give some insight into Hazur's tour in Japan.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that Hazur went to Japan just for 1 week across the world shows how much importance there is to mosques. And the thing is that literally across the other side of the world, for this purpose, to open the new mosque and to tell the local people of Japan what is the purpose of a mosque, why we built the mosque. And but of course Hazur was there for an entire week, and it was a very packed schedule. I remember we travelled, and it was a very long flight, about 12 hours from London, and we reached Tokyo, and obviously most of us were extremely tired, and I think we were hoping for a few hours of rest, but I think we went to our hotel for about 2 hours, and from there straight away the activity started, and the Hazur was taken to what is known as the Meiji Shrine. Okay. It's a very historic place. Emperor Meiji was a very revered person. He was a leader in Japan. And so many world leaders and dignitaries, when they go to Japan, this is where they start their tours. And it was also requested by the leaders of the Meiji Shrine if Hazur would come and bless their place with a visit. Okay. So Hazur went there. And you're right, it is quite a cultural place, a very beautiful place. I mean, first of all, we saw Hazur's great manners, which we see everywhere. That as we're walking along to reach the shrine building, there was some beautiful forest area with beautiful local flowers. And Hazur had his camera phone, or a camera phone with him. And hundreds of other people literally were taking photos with their phones. But Hazur didn't at first. Rather, Hazur asked the host that, do I have permission to take a photo? And the thing is, I remember thinking that despite his such busy and his great status, Hazur always remembers these basic moral courtesies and etiquettes. And I mean, again, that shows his humility. Yeah. But anyway, then when we got to the shrine, Hazur was greeted by one of the main priests of that shrine, and who's very well known throughout the country. And they have a principle, or their belief is, according to their Shinto beliefs, that nature, they call suns to be gods, the forest to be gods. So when they explained this to Hazur, Hazur then took the opportunity to tell them about Islam's true teachings. And Hazur said to them that according to Islamic belief, these things that you consider as gods, we consider to be signs of gods.
I think it was in your diary as well, that when Hazur wrote something on the visitor's book, I think it was, or some other place, Hazur wrote a verse of the Holy Quran saying that Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth, and that also emphasized Islam's teaching of unity and gave them the true meaning of what they understand as to be idolatry. Whereas Hazur said that everything that you see, sun, moon, everything else, it actually comes from the light of God Almighty, and the power behind it and the creator of all of these things is God Almighty.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, you mentioned they have a wall at the shrine where they ask all the guests, and especially the significant guests, to leave a message. And I went look through the wall, and most people were praising them and the local people, or thanking them. But Hazur's message was one of, as you said, the unity of God. So with again, with balance, with love, with kindness, Hazur took the opportunity to do tabligh and emphasize the true message of Islam.
I've also seen that whenever Hazur visits different places, Hazur also partakes in the food of that country, as long as it's according to the teachings of Islam. That similar incidents happened in Japan.
Yeah, I mean, just after the Meiji Shrine, I remember it was quite interesting that there was Hazur has a friend in Japan who's come to visit Hazur in London on a couple of occasions, has addressed our Jalsa as well. And so he requested Hazur to attend a dinner. And I remember there was a number of courses, and one of the courses was turtle soup. And I remember when it came and I was served it, I was very, very hesitant, and I thought, I'm going to skip this one. But then I looked to 2 or 3 seats to the right where Hazur was seated, and Hazur was eating it. And so you're quite right that if something is according to the teachings of Islam, if it is halal, then Hazur will partake in it. And again, that's a form of respect to the local culture.
We'll take a look at the Friday sermon in which Hazur inaugurated the Baitul Ahad Mosque, which was also heard by, I think the Friday sermon was also listened to by many non-Ahmadi guests that attended the Jummah as well. So we'll take a look at an excerpt from Hazur's Friday sermon.
बस ये मस्जिद आप पर जिम्मेदारी डाल रही है कि जहाँ इबादतों के मयारों को ऊंचा करें, वहाँ तबलीग के लिए अपने आप को तैयार करें. अभी इफ्ताह से पहले ही मीडिया ने इस मस्जिद की काफ़ी कवरेज भी दे दी है और एक अमन पसंद इस्लाम का तारुफ इस हवाले से अहले मुल्क के सामने पेश किया है. बस इस तारुफ से फ़ायदा उठाना अब यहाँ रहने वाले हर अहमदी का काम है. जापानियों के लिए मस्जिद तो कोई नई चीज़ नहीं है. यहाँ जैसा कि मैंने बताया, कहा जाता है कि 100 के करीब मसाजिद हैं. तो हमारी इस मस्जिद के इफ्तिताह को इतनी अहमियत क्यों? इसलिए कि आम मुसलमानों से हटकर इस्लाम की तस्वीर हम दिखाते हैं.
The main highlight of that tour was the opening of the Baitul Ahad Mosque. Yeah. The main purpose of Hazur touring Japan on that occasion. How was that? And give us some insight into that particular occasion as well.
Yeah, I mean, the opening of the mosque was extremely blessed, and certainly for that part of Asia, it was the first mosque that had been opened, and which includes countries like China, first Ahmadi mosque, I should say. Countries like China, Korea, that region. And Hazur opened the mosque officially with his Friday sermon, in which he spoke about the true concept of mosques. The next day, Hazur then took the opportunity to address the Japanese people directly. There was a reception that was organized in Nagoya city. And there, I remember before the main reception, Hazur met some of the main dignitaries, and then later on Hazur addressed the entire reception. And one of the people Hazur met was a priest. And the priest said, he asked Hazur a question that, what is peace? And Hazur looked at him, and then Hazur said to him, he said that, for me, peace is liking for others what you like for yourself. It's a very, very simple definition. But if you think about it, it's so wise. The thing is that all the solutions, all the problems to the world today could be solved if people follow this basic principle, that rather than seeking better for themselves, wanting those other people in the world to have what they prefer themselves. And this is again according to the teachings of Islam. And afterwards I met the priest, and he said that throughout my life, and he's a very elderly person, he said, I've never ever heard such a beautiful answer, that what has filled my heart with contentment, and which has satisfied me, as those words spoken by your Khalifa.
We'll now, Abu Sab, take a look at the address, an excerpt from the address of Hazur Anwar at the reception hosted after the inauguration of the mosque.
Let me make it crystal clear that Islam's teachings and the purposes of true mosques are entirely peaceful and a means of bringing society together. Indeed, the basic objectives underpinning mosques are that they should be places for people to gather together, to worship God, and to spread love, compassion, and goodwill throughout society.
So Ahmadi Muslims around the world are very lucky to have Huzur deliver a Friday sermon every single week, an hour-long Friday sermon, which requires a lot of preparation, of course. And that's every single week. And Ahmadis throughout the world watch it and are very lucky to get direct guidance from Huzur Anwar. Many who can't attend Baitul Futuh or other mosques where Huzur delivers his sermons, they watch it on MTA. And it's a particular issue which relates to every single Ahmadi. And many people have mentioned this, and we've all experienced this, that when you listen to Huzur's khutbahs, it feels like Huzur speaking particularly to you as an individual person.
The khutbah is one of the basic elements which is the source of the unity of our Jamaat, because every single Ahmadi knows the message of the Khalifa every single week. Sometimes I meet journalists or non-Muslims and they ask me, why is there no radicalization, why is there no extremism in the Ahmadi community when we see it in other communities? And the answer always is that because we are guided by a spiritual leader who is reflecting Islam's true teachings, and we all have access to his message, we all hear his message, we're all united at his hand. And the khutbah is a main means of this. And that's one of the reasons why Huzur often refers that it's most important that all Ahmadis as a family sit down and watch the khutbah of Khalifa Waqt.
In an answer to a question that was raised to Huzur, Huzur also explained how Huzur prepares for Friday sermons, and we'll have a look at that clip in which Huzur himself particularly explains this. Very interesting.
You are the head of tens of millions of people, Ahmadi people. I can imagine it can be a high pressure to be the leader of all those people. Is it true? Do you experience that pressure yourself?
Being the head of the religious community and worldwide Ahmadiyya community, yes, of course, there is pressure. Allah gives you the power to overcome all your pressures and discharge your duties. Yeah? You are talking of the workload or some other pressure.
Also the pressure of being the head of all those believers. So everything you do must be totally good.
So should be totally good, yes. You see, I remember once a politician of a certain European country, and I was telling him that I had to deliver a sermon every week that would last almost 45-50 minutes to 1 hour. So he said it's a difficult task to do. He said not that you have to deliver a sermon and apart from that speeches in your annual functions and conventions in various parts of the world, but even politicians speak for a very long period. So the thing is that you have to speak something which is sensible and gives sense and guides the people and should be based on the words of God. That is the important thing. And I have to find subject matters for that, for preparing my speeches. It takes me a long time to prepare a speech. Not only that in the convention and the annual functions, but every week, which is listened all over the world through MTA.